Welcome back. In this video, we're going to do some interpolation and extrapolation with our data set. So to interpolate, that means that you're picking some x value within the range of your x values. So it looks like my x values range from 11 to 74. So I have a pretty big window. I can pick something I already have, or I can pick something that I don't already have to make an interpolation of that. Let's choose something that we don't already have. Let's choose 50. I'm going to choose 50, and I'm asking what is the y value. Well, remember, we've already stored our regression equation in here. So you could go ahead and do it by hand, or you could go to your table. Before I go to my table, let's go to it. I bet it's going to look awful. I'm starting here at 0 and I'm jumping by ones. I don't want to have to scroll to 50. So instead, just like the window sets up your graph, notice right above window is table set. So the table set sets up your table. So this is where you want your table to start. This is how much you want the values of your x table to jump by. Or if you know if you're going to ask for a bunch of random x's, instead of auto, you can go down here to ask and hit enter. And now when I do that, notice I'm going to go second to my table, and notice my table is blank because I haven't asked it what values I want. So I'm going to hit 50, and now it's telling me that my value of y should be about 21.618. Great. And I can keep doing this. Anytime I pick something within my range of 11 to 74, I'm doing interpolation. So let's try 56. And that gives me 24.715. Now, I didn't give this data set context, so whatever your context is, this would be 50 of whatever your x is to 21.618 of whatever your y's are. Let's see, I can do something that I already have, so let's try 42. And notice that 42 didn't give me back 22, it gave me back 17.489. And remember, that's the whole point of a linear regression, is that it's based off of the data that we have seen. We're giving our best estimate of how we think the data is actually behaving. You will sometimes have data points that go directly through or very closely through your line, but it's often that the data that we observe is off from the data that we expect via the line. The line is an estimate. It's estimating what the data is doing. Kind of like it's taking an average of the data sets at the same time. Okay, so this is all interpolation because I'm again within the range that I have. I could do extrapolation, which means I'm going outside. I could either go below what my range is or above what my range is. So if I go say 10, well, I expect that 10 should be fairly reasonable to what I'm getting for other stuff. So negative 9.735. Again, this data set doesn't have context, so it's a little hard to explain this, but if it had context, usually our linear regressions are only good for so much, and after a while they start to kind of fall apart. So this is a pretty big set, so maybe I would expect this to go all the way to 0 and maybe up to 100, but I feel like either of those are pushing it quite a bit. The further you get away from the ends of where your data are, the further it starts to feel like you're maybe cheating a little bit. So let's look at what 80 should give me. And of course it's going to give me something that makes sense with the line. So when you're trying to explain this, don't talk about like, oh, well, the point fits on the line because of course it does. That's where you got it from. What you need to talk about is whether or not this number makes sense within context of what you're talking about. Maybe after the 70s, maybe when it gets into the 80s, this thing that we're talking about really starts to take off. And so this is really the only interesting part where you can do a linear regression, and after that, or model it linearly, after that it starts to become some sort of curve linear, or maybe it stops taking on pattern after that. Maybe 80 is a meaningless value within what we're talking about. Maybe 10 is a meaningless value. Maybe 11 is where this thing starts and 10 is meaningless. So really paying attention to the context of your problem will help you with interpolation, again, within the range, and extrapolation, again, without of the range.